Thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate it. I actually, before I'll get started, I'll need to turn it on as well. There you go. So before I'll get started, I'll just a few words. I'm coming in from a conference in town, one of the bigger life science investment conferences, the BARDA America. And it's amazing. Every time I come across having about 40 meetings in 3 days, most of them with small life science companies all the way to Pfizer and Lilly and all of those big ones. The misperception people have of what non-dilutive funding is, and what a great tool it may be for them as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, executives of life science companies. And probably one of the points I'm just bringing in from the conference, now I'll go to the presentation. They're always surprised that there's money out there, government money out there. Most of it is governmental. And to a great extent, they don't realize the fact that every year, for the past 3 years, NIH and DOD alone, in direct funding, not subcontractors, et cetera, direct funding to life science companies, invested more money into the industry, life science industry, compared to the entire VC community. So all of the money with all of the VCs put together is about $2 billion less than what NIH and DOD put in directly to companies every year in the past 3 years. And that represents pretty much the largest funding source available for any kind of life science activity, research activity that is out there. And not that I'm proposing that it should, one should establish a company just based on grants. There are a few of those, but it's not going to work generally. But ignoring this huge pocket of money completely, I think is a mistake. And it's something that every company needs to invest in and look at and take advantage of. So this is pretty much what I'm going to talk about, how you do that. Just a few words on FreeMind. About 14 years in business, 40 people on our staff. We work pretty much with any player in the life sciences. Universities, medical schools, medical centers, research institutes, and all through the industry, mainly with the industry, from very small startups, 2, 3, 4 individuals, and up to the very largest, so Lilly, Pfizer, J&J, Medtronic, GE, et cetera. And what we try to do really is help our clients get as much money as possible to support their research and development through non-dilutive sources. So we're trying really to be a tool given to the administration, to the company, to be able to identify the right funding sources that are relevant for them, because it's really easy to try and get lost, really easy to get lost trying to get some free money, but forgetting about your strategy and where you're trying to get to with your science. And you need to find the right opportunities. And then it's really hard to know the language and to actually present your science in such a way that will increase your chances for success. So this is pretty much what we try to help our clients to do. And overall, basically, you're looking at a huge pocket of about $50 billion awarded every single year in the life sciences alone. Most of it is through NIH, and I know all of you are probably thinking SBIR. I'll get to SBIR, but SBIR is a very small portion of it. So NIH has basically 27 different institutes and centers. Each is focusing on a different field, different type of research focus, NCI cancer, NINDS neurological disorders, NIBIB bioimaging and engineering. And their budget is $30.9 billion. So that's how much money is spent every year through NIH alone on life science research. The majority of it goes to external research, not within the NIH. Other HHS agencies are very important also. They're smaller, much smaller than NIH, but still relevant for funding. So BARDA, I'll touch upon most of them later as well. BARDA is one. FDA is not only for getting regulation, et cetera, but also they would fund. They will give you money to do some research as well. CDC, NSF. DOD is a major component in this $50 billion, about $12 to $15 billion every year through DOD. And what one needs to remember as far as DOD is concerned, it's not military oriented necessarily. I mean, you could get breast cancer research funding from DOD, you could get autism research funding from DOD. It's not only military oriented. And then you've got many private foundations, Gates, Cohn, Michael J. Fox, etc. So all of these together represent about $50 billion allocated every year, and a lot of it is overlapping. A lot of projects could go to different places, and then you need to make a decision which of these places is the most relevant for you, which would present the best opportunity for you to get the funding. And overall, keep in mind, we're talking science, but the goal is financial. There's only one goal to this entire thing, getting money. And probably the next two slides are the most important. Every single part of the research and development process within medical devices, therapeutics, delivery systems, within the health-related sciences, every single part could be funded. There are mechanisms to support everything from very early stage. This is the medical device process, but you go through the drug development as well. Every single part of it, from discovery, from very early stage, exploratory type research even, through the different preclinical processes, through animal testing, toxicology, formulation, you name it, and all the way to clinical stages, including phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. Everything is fundable. It doesn't mean you'll get the money. Success rate is very low, but it's about 10, 12% on average. But still, in theory, every part of the process, there's a mechanism designed to support it. You could get funding for it. So when you're trying to see where you're going and what you're trying to get money for, specifically your science work, you need to keep that in mind and see which of these mechanisms will fit best to support you and will increase your chances for success. This is pretty hard to see, I guess. But basically, this is a split of the NIH budget for 2012. And what you probably cannot see is the fact that on the left-hand side, the big bar there, it's clinical research. So that's how much money NIH had spent on clinical trials externally to the NIH. It's a huge amount of money. And then all of the other bars represent basically different types of diseases, different types of research that was, and the amount of money that was spent on those. So again, you cover pretty much anything from nursing work, new methodologies, from developing a new medical device or new technology, from really anything at all to new flu vaccines or new therapeutics for cancer, or you name it. Anything that is health related could get funding from NIH, DOD, or any of the other sources. When you approach NIH, now I'll talk about NIH first because it is the biggest and most important. You need to keep in mind the fact that the review process is not a pure scientific discussion. It really is a risk evaluation. They're trying to see, really find the best research projects, but you know, to be honest, probably 90% of the projects presented to NIH are great science, really, really amazing science. So it's not only about having great science that you present. You need to be able to also reduce the risk associated with your project, so they feel confident that they can give you the money and you will complete the project. So they want to see that your work is very innovative, highly significant, but also that you have the data to support your claims, that you can really make sense and justify your budget, that you're asking for the right amounts of money, that you have the resources available to actually complete the work, and you have the experience and capabilities to do that. If you can present a complete project, a complete process that will allow you to go from A to Z, will allow you to complete the project within the time frame and within the financial, the budget that you're expecting or you're asking for, then your chances will be so much higher to actually win. So science is really the key. Bad science will not win. But then again, good science is not enough. You really need to go beyond that. You need to be able to present your capabilities in a very clear way to be able to get the funding. The NIH process, review process basically, is a one submission process. There are deadlines. Most of them are very standard. For SBIRs, 3 deadlines a year, in April, in August and December. For everything else, and SBIR is, again, a very small program. I think next slide is talking about that. For everything else, it's February, June, and October. And then in between, you have a few more different deadlines. Generally speaking, 80% of the NIH funding, NIH awards, will not be solicited. So if you log into grants.gov and you're trying to see if there are any solicitations, any RFAs, RFPs, PAs that could be relevant for your research, it's a really good first step, but it will represent only 20% of the available opportunities. 80% are not solicited. So pretty much you're expected to just put together an application, submit, and hope for the best. What we suggest is that you give the program officers a call, ask them if they're really interested in your science, and only then make a decision to submit the application. Because if they're not, or if they've funded 6 such projects in the past year, your chances of winning are very low. They're not going to give more money. And then you submit the application. It will go for a peer review process that is external to the NIH. So the reviewers are not part of the NIH. They'll be professors or researchers from industry from all over. And they'll give you a score for your scientific merit for the application. But then the final decision on funding is internal to the institute within the NIH you're trying to get money from. And then they'll make a decision based on the score of your application, but also based on their need and interest and focus and previous applications that got funding within the institute. And all of that you need to take into account as you write the application. You really need to take that into account and consider all of these different aspects, because the application is there for you to sell your science. Researchers don't like me saying that, but you really are selling your science to the reviewers. And as in any other selling process, you really need to know the audience. You need to know what they're looking for, what they're expecting, and then you need to be able to talk their language. So SBIR and STTR, I'll go through a few programs within NIH. First is SBIR and STTR. It's a good program, but it's not an NIH program. SBIR and STTR is an SBA program. And every agency of the government has to allocate 2.5% of their budget to small businesses through the SBIR program. This really is a very small part of the budget available. Every company is eligible for pretty much every other mechanism available as well. So this is not what you should focus on. This is one program. It's not the only one program. And basically, generally speaking, you get about $150,000 for the $150,000 for the phase 1 SBIR and about $1 million for the SBIR phase 2. You need to be a small company, under 500 employees. You need to be owned by U.S. citizens. If not, it's not considered an SBIR eligible company. And then the majority of the funding needs to be used within the organization. So you cannot be a virtual company. You cannot just be a person in a lab, some university, and then have subcontractors do the work for you. This will not be allowed under the SBIR regulation. This last August, a month ago, a few new regulations came into place for the SBIRs. Number one, for the first time, VC-backed companies are allowed into the SBIR program. And that is both good and bad. The good part is that many small companies do get some funding from VCs, and so far they were not allowed to actually receive any of the SBIR funding. At the same time, they did not increase the overall budget for the SBIR. And so what it means is that a lot more companies, good companies, that already got some funding and have resources are now competing for the same pocket of money with everyone else. It drops the success rates. So that's something that needs to be taken into account as you look into the SBIRs. They do allow a bit of an increase, if you can justify it, per each application. And again, what that means is, without increasing the budget, what that means is basically that there's more competition for less money. So it makes it just a bit harder. And then they did promise that by 2017, the budget will increase slightly from 2.5% to 3.65% of the available budget. Not really an increase that will make any major difference in success rates. So bottom line for SBIR is that it's really a good program. You must take it into account. You need to look into it and understand it, but it cannot be the main or the only program available that you will use. Another important part for the SBIR, I'm sorry, I'll go back here, is the threshold between phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 takes almost as much effort, time, and almost as big an application as the phase 2 application. But it gives you only $150,000, maybe $200,000. It's really not worth the trouble. The only reason a phase 1 will be worth it is if you're conscious enough to take advantage of phase 2 after you've submitted phase 1. One of the key statistics, I think I have a slide on that later, is the number of the percentage of success rate for SBIR phase 1 submitters to the phase 2, which is only 6%. The reason for that is that most of the phase 1 winners simply do not submit their phase 2 application, which to me makes absolutely no sense. You literally have bought a very pricey key to a very specific door, and you're throwing it away. You're just not going to use it. If you're submitting a phase 1, just go ahead and all the way through and submit your phase 2. If not, just don't submit the phase 1. It's a lot of work. STTR is part of the SBIR program. It's 0.8% of the SBIR, of the 2.5, and it's there to support industry academic collaborations. The truth is the STTR success rates are significantly higher compared to the SBIR, and the reason is that there aren't too many submitting. So if you have any kind of academic collaborations, and I can't really think of any company, life science company that doesn't, take advantage of those. Put together an STTR. The regulation is the same, same type of companies, same amount of money you can get. Everything is pretty much the same, but it's all based on a collaboration between an industry company, and an academic collaborator, a lab at some university. And it can be 60-40 or 70-30 between the two, doesn't really matter. Either one can be the lead. So this is a really interesting and better program to look at if you get to the SBIR STTR program in general. Now this is the slide I was talking about earlier about success rates. And you can see the success rate for a phase 2 is pretty high. It's pretty good, but you really need to be able to be in a position to submit it. If you focus on the phase 1, it's significantly lower. In fact, last year for NCI, National Cancer Institute, the phase 1 SBIR success rate was only 2%. Very, very low. And then if you go for the fast track, you can submit the phase 1 and phase 2 together. It's even more dangerous. Success rate even drop further. And one of the issues is that a few years back, if you would submit a fast track, phase 1, phase 2 together, and they didn't like or they thought it's too dangerous, they would award just the phase 1 if they like the science. Today they will not do it. They will either accept the whole program or will not accept any of it. So you need to be conscious of that. Submitting a fast track only if you're very confident in your ability to make the phase 1, and you can make a very, very strong case to it. So SBIR STTR is 2.5% of the budget. We're going to talk about 97% of the budget now. Everything else is not SBIR STTR eligible. None of the regulation about virtual companies, about foreign usage of funding, about being a small company, VC-backed or not, the money limitation, none of these will be relevant here. And one of the key misunderstandings in industry in general, misperceptions as far as non-dilutive funding is concerned for the life sciences, is this. People seem to think that R01s are just for university researchers. They're not. People seem to think R21s, UO1s, any of the other mechanisms are available only for academics. They're not. All of these mechanisms are available for every type of organization, for companies, for foreign companies, for collaborations of any sort, for big companies, Lilly, Pfizer, J&J, etc., for small companies, no problem. You can submit the application. You're eligible to win. And it is true that you will compete now with academics and with bigger companies as well as with other small companies. But if your science is strong enough and the focus is scientific, and if you can make good claims to your strength, to your capabilities, to your resources, then your chances of winning are just as good. And so the question turns now to the way you present your science and to the strength of your science rather than the structure of your company. Generally speaking, two types of awards there. So you've got standards and large-scale awards. Standard, the R01 is the most common one, but there are others, R21 mechanisms, etc. Basically support basic research. Not only could go beyond that with UO1 mechanisms, etc., but generally speaking, it's basic research up to phase 1 clinical, from exploratory, very early stage up to phase 1. The focus is scientific. The project is focusing on a single specific, the application is focusing on a very single specific project, and it needs to be highly detailed. It can't just give general indications. It needs to be hypothesis-driven. It needs to be very clear scientifically. You need to really be able to support your claims. If you have any publications, if you have any papers, posters that you gave, anything at all that will support your scientific claims to make it more valid. It's very, very important. The budget you're presenting needs to make sense. You need to be able to justify it. And usually, it'll come for an R01 at least, it'll be up to about $500,000 a year, up to 5 years. So you're looking at direct costs of about $2.5 million. Indirect for companies will be about 25 to 35% on top of that. For R21, it'll be about $300,000 per project, up to 2 years. The large-scale awards could go pretty much anywhere. About 3-4 months ago, we were able to help our client get just over $62 million to do their phase 2 clinical trials. We're talking about a 4-individual company, very small company. Okay. Of course, most of the work was allocated out, was done by subcontractors, but the point is that it's a multi-project application. There'll be different projects. It could be different sites conducting clinical research for the same project. It could be different projects looking at the same focus or same field, coming from different directions. There is no limit on the budget. It will usually be a collaborative effort between academics and industry, between different academic groups, between different companies. And you really need to be able to justify a very complex budget. Now, when you're looking at those multi-center or multi-project applications, one of the key issues is not only scientific. It's not only whether you can conduct the research. It's can you really make good claims to you being able to manage $50 million. And that's not trivial. That's really not easy to do. These applications need to be able to come together in a very clear voice, very coherent presentation of different people coming from different directions, sometimes using different same terminology to mean different things. So the language and the way it is presented is really crucial in this respect. And the administrative aspects of how information will flow from one project to the next, how will it all come together for the results you're expecting, are crucial in the application itself, are crucial to the chances of you being able to be awarded. Large scale will generally be split into 2 categories: grants and contracts. From the awardee perspective, from your perspective, there isn't much difference. I mean, you get money to do your research, a lot of money. But from a granting or from a regulatory perspective, there is a major difference between a contract and a grant. And usually, the grant will be awarded every year in advance, beginning of the year. For the full year, you get the money, and then you need to report on it every year, and you get the second year and third year, etc. But it's all allocated. The review will take about between 8 and 12 months at NIH. Usually within 4 months, you will get the feedback on your score, their peer review that was external, and then within 4 more months or 8 months from submission deadline, you'll get a final decision on funding, yes or no, by the institute, and you will get a full review of the application. When you look at contracts, there are some at NIH, mostly though DOD uses the contract mechanism. These will either be milestone oriented, so you will not get the funding every year in advance, but rather you'll get the funding to get to the first milestone, and then once you make it, you'll move on to the next milestone, or it'll be cost reimbursement. So you will submit invoices every month, and you get money in return based on the invoices you've submitted. The review usually is done through an individual, another group, and it will be an individual from within the organization, within DOD, and not someone external. Good or bad, it really depends on who you're assigned with. And then the post-review process is very, very, very difficult. You go through a negotiation phase that really means rewriting the application several more times. And then the review could be very fast because it is an individual. It could be 3-4 months, but it could also be very, very long because of the very same reason. So these are the main differences between different mechanisms of large-scale funding. Generally speaking, NIH success rates are dropping. The reason they're dropping is the budget is stagnant for about 5 years now. It has not moved up at all. It didn't really it wasn't really affected by sequestration. I mean, it wasn't cut dramatically. The extramural budget, the budget allocated to support projects from outside, it mainly affected the internal budget of the NIH. But still, one of the surprising facts is that although number of applications increased in 2012, there was a very slight increase in success rates as well. One of the reasons for that is that they've allocated more money of their budget for extramural support rather than intramural research, and so effectively increased the extramural budget, although the overall budget was stagnant. But still, you're looking at very, very low success rates. In general, across the board, different mechanisms that are relevant for most of the projects that you'll be working on, you're looking at about 10 to 15% success rate on average. So about 90% of projects submitted will not be awarded. Doesn't mean that they're bad projects. Very, very good projects that were not presented in the right way most times. I'll go into some of the other mechanisms now, some of the other agencies beyond NIH. BARDA is probably the largest HHS mechanism that is not NIH. BARDA is an agency that is focusing on basically protecting the population from biological, radiological, nuclear, and chemical threats. And they will support within their field any type of project that could support these specific goals. Their mission really starts at about phase 1 and onward. They will support with large amounts of money, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and really what they're trying to do is to prepare products to be purchased by the BioShield initiative. So if you're able to step into this program, it's really a long-term thing, and chances are that the government will end up buying stockpiles of whatever you're manufacturing, and really is your biggest client that you can, there really isn't any other client who will buy influenza shots. So it's pretty much the only path there. If they really like your project, they may start earlier, maybe late preclinical. But one of the key issues with BARDA is the fact that they're really, really nice. It's quite amazing. The fact is that they will take calls, they will speak with you, they will meet with you. They have tech watches, which are meetings you can prepare, you can schedule ahead of time with their researchers at BARDA. They'll give you very good direct feedback on your research. Will tell you whether you're there and you can submit, or maybe it's too early, and they'll give you exactly the tasks to complete prior to submitting. And then the funding levels are, I mentioned that earlier, are really, really high. You're usually looking at 10 million and up to 150 million most times per project awarded through BARDA. DOD is very complex, but basically DOD, you have to remember, is not military necessarily. The DOD's charter, as far as research and development in the life sciences, is to support the servicemen and women, but also their families and their veterans. And so from that perspective, pretty much anything, the entire population, should be supported through the DOD research and development support. And so different programs are active under the DOD. One of the most interesting, important ones is the CDMRP. CDMRP are programs that are designed literally to go anywhere from a research perspective. There's a list on the left of some of the projects awarded in 2012, ALS, TBI, breast cancer research, autism, really, anything at all, nothing to do directly with the Army, with the military, with soldiers, but this is a really important tool, a very, very important program. They have basically 3 levels of support, very early stage, basic research, and clinical stages. Each one will have different amounts of money allocated to it, obviously. It will only come out of, based on specific solicitations. So every year in the March, April timeframe, they'll issue their solicitations for the year, and they'll say exactly what they're looking for and what exactly they're expecting to fund in the coming year, and this is something you really need to look out for. The U.S. Army BAAs are the exact opposite. These are the mechanisms they will use to support military type military-oriented type research. But even there, whether it is a soldier that is hurt in a battlefield or a civilian that is hurt in a car accident, it doesn't really matter from a research perspective of a traumatic brain injury, for example, research. So even here, even if you have a project that is not necessarily military-oriented or focused, it could still be relevant. This is the BAA you were referring to earlier, and this is pretty broad in focus. They use a different mechanism. I'll touch upon it in, I think, 2 more slides. But basically, they'll be looking out for anything that could be relevant to their very long list of fields of interest. And then based on what they receive, they'll make decisions on which of those they're more interested or not in getting a full application for. There is no limit on these budgets. You can really ask for anything, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, but you need to be able to justify it. DTRA is another agency under DOD that is basically the same as BARDA, but is focusing on the battlefield. So infectious diseases, nuclear threats, chemical warfare, etc. They're giving substantial amounts of money, tens of millions per project. Again, basically the same as BARDA, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 even, full funding for it. And many times they talk to each other, BARDA and DTRA and NIAID, National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases at NIH. They'll be talking to each other. Projects that start at NIAID, very early stage exploratory type research, will then move on to their R1 level at NIAID and then pushed up to BARDA or DTRA for continued research and research support. And then the last of the DOD programs I'll touch upon is probably the most interesting one. DARPA is not a life science focused program. It's very general. They'll take anything really, but anything that is high risk, high reward, or in simple terms, crazy science. If you can put together a system, an elevator to Mars, that's what they would like to see. Really the craziest stuff. They're looking for projects with under 1% of chance of being successful eventually, and they'll give endless amounts of money for it. But it will also be milestone oriented. So there are always going to be go, no-go decisions each step of the way before you get the next tranche of money coming in to support your progress. But really, really important, very, very interesting, very early stage, could be very, very early stage. Great ideas that need to be implemented. So this is DARPA. So now for the process of DOD, I'm sorry. And that it goes for BARDA as well, although BARDA is HHS. Basically, all of these will have a three-step, three-submission process. First of all, they'll look to get pre-proposals. These will be about 5 to 10 pages, and they're incredibly difficult to put together. It seems or sounds easy to put together 5 pages on some project. This is really where the decision is going to be made. The success rate on those 5-page white papers is about 5% success rate of moving on to the next stage. You really need to be able in 5 pages to give it all, to explain the exact science, to explain where you're trying to get, what your aims are, how you're going to do it, and how much money you're going to need, and what are your capabilities. What you will later need to do in 400 pages, you need to do now in 5. And that's really, really difficult. So first you submit the white paper. After a review, they will ask those white papers that they like to submit a full proposal, and you will get 90 days to do so. The full proposal at DOD and BARDA usually is a contract, which means it's going to be 200 to 400 pages. Very complex, very detailed. You need to go through every step of the way, exactly how it's going to happen, what are the scientific details, who's going to do what, subcontractors, collaborators, all of the information, and as well as budgetary information, justification to the budget, detailed budget, etc. After that, it'll go through a technical review. The person reviewing it scientifically, just like the NIH peer review that is external, and they will decide which of those projects they like or not. Those that they like will go to the third stage, which is negotiation on the specific contract that will be allocated, but this is not standard business negotiation, two lawyers discussing numbers. It'll be about the specific work you're going to do or not through this program, when you will need to provide them with reports, results, etc. What will be the milestones, and then how much money you need to complete that. What will be the actual budget. Usually what this means, through negotiations, you rewrite the application about 3 or 4 more times, the entire thing. So very, very intense, very difficult, and usually immediate time frame. So they may call you or send you an email in the morning and say, hey, we need a revised budget by tomorrow. Or, we need to change whatever part of the application by next week. And you really have no choice. You need to comply. They make demands, and you comply. That's the way the negotiation goes with the Army. And then once it is finalized, you get the award. As mentioned, most of these awards will either be milestone-oriented or cost reimbursement. And usually it will be about 18 months for the complete process to go through from submission deadline. On the other hand, most of these awards are extremely large, tens of millions of dollars. So there's a return for this hard work. And the truth is, once you've passed the white paper part, once you've been through that, success rate really goes up. So from the full proposal to negotiation, it will be about 30% on average. And then once you're into negotiation, almost all of them will be completed successfully, and you'll get the money. They negotiate with those they know they want. They don't just negotiate generally. So this is about the review process for the Army, DOD, and BARDA. As far as private foundations are concerned, well, the truth is that there are so many of them, and each of them will have their own regulation, that it's hard to really comment on any of those. Generally speaking, some of them are larger, more established, have substantial amounts of money, and will have very specific methodologies of how to review, how to get applications, and let people know what they're looking to get. But most of the others really do not. So you need to contact them, you need to talk to them, you need to be aware of what they've been doing and keep in touch with the different foundations. Also, the money available usually is not huge. I mean, if you compare it to the NIH $30.9 billion a year, it's really insignificant. It'll be a few, maybe tens of millions per each such private foundation. It's not a lot of money. Also, there are some changes in the past 18 months to 2 years as far as their IP policies. Some of them now ask for matching funds. Some of them ask for share of the IP or for royalty payments. So they're not purely non-dilutive. They're changing a little bit. You really need to read the fine prints to be able to understand exactly what you're walking into with the private foundations. But then again, some of them are really great. I mean, we've done a lot of work with Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's work. We've done a lot of work with JDRF or with the Gates Foundation. So there's a lot of money out there. It's relevant, it's good, but you really need to understand the details of each and every foundation, because it'll be different from the other foundations and very different from the government agencies. So the bottom line of all of this, really, to be able to get as much money as possible, is to be able to well, first understand what it is that you're trying to sell, and then be able to sell it. You need to know your audience, who you're trying to get to fund your project. Is it NIH? Which institute within NIH? Which program and mechanism within the institute within the NIH? Is it DOD, BARDA? Is it one of the private foundations? Each will have different standards. Each will have a different idea of what they're looking to get funded. And you need to consider that as you write the application, because this is the audience who will review it. If it's going to be a single individual reviewing, or if it's going to be a peer review. By the way, all of the NIH study sections, the review panels, the rosters are published. So you can know who will be the people reviewing your application ahead of time. If you're able to review their backgrounds, review their what they've done before in their academic lives, what are their expertise, so you know who you're writing this application to. You need to be able to know their needs. The NIH website has a wonderful search engine. And you really, through this, you can know exactly how many projects have been awarded in the past year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years for a particular field of research. If you can find too many applications there that have been awarded for your particular field of research, chances are they're not going to give more money. You need to consider how you want to submit it or which of the institutes you want to take advantage of. For example, if you go back to the earlier example of a new device for imaging device for breast cancer. So one immediate place to go to will be NCI, of course, National Cancer Institute, and they have a wonderful program for imaging devices. But then again, NIBIB, the National Institute for Bioimaging and Engineering, is a good place too. And their focus is on the actual technology development, not the target, not the fact that it's going to be used with breast cancer, but how it's going to work. What is the technology behind it, bioengineering part of it. And then the CDMRP has a very important program under the Army. CDMRP has a very important program for breast cancer as well. So they may be interested. And of course, Komen Foundation is interested in supporting research for breast cancer. So you need to talk to each of those organizations to be able to understand which of those represent the best place for you and which mechanism, which application you need to put together to increase your chances for success, depending on the type of project you do. Maybe split your project into different, smaller, more focused projects and take each part somewhere else. You need to consider all of that prior to putting together your application. You need to know your limitations. Many times, especially with junior researchers, I must say, we've encountered some issues with accepting assistance from the outside, from accepting collaborations or partnerships from the outside. You need to be able to recognize some of the issues that you cannot deal with and your limitations, and bring in consultants, bring in partners or collaborators to support you in those fields. All of this needs to be there so you can reduce the risk associated with giving the money to you. The project must be great science, but also you need to be able to find the right home for it and to present it in the right way. Looking into that, deciding who should be the PI is one of the key strategic decisions on each application. You can see here that there's a difference between a new PI and a veteran PI in getting funding. Of course, the veteran PI, has a slightly higher success rate. But then again, it's not dramatic. And the question is not only whether they're established PIs or not. I mean, the biggest name is not necessarily the best person to put on, as the PI for the application. Say you have on your board or someone is a Nobel laureate, is a great professor. Everyone knows him. He'll sell the application, no doubt. Having their name there is crucial. But do you really think that the reviewers will accept the fact that they will allocate 50% of their time for a small project of a small company? Probably not. So you need to know how to use it, maybe as a consultant. At the same time, if you're going to use a junior PI, someone who's never won an application before at the NIH, and use many different big names around them to support them, the question will be, can they really manage these great individuals working with them? Is it really realistic to expect a junior PI to manage all of these individuals? So the answer is not no necessarily, but it's someone that you must address in the application itself. It must be taken into account as you write it. So the track record, publications, the name that the person has within a specific field, all are very relevant for making the right decision about who should be the PI. And then as you go through the process of justifying your budget, you must acknowledge this part. It doesn't matter if you're asking for $100,000, $200,000, or $200 million. They need to be confident that you're going to know what you're going to do with the money. You need to be able to justify every dollar, every cent that you're asking for. If they're not sure about your ability to manage it in the right way, in your ability to complete the project with a given time frame and the given budget that you're asking for, they're not going to give you the money. Competition is brutal. 90% will not win. It's not about having great science. It's about being able to justify the money you're going to ask for your great science. And you need to show how the money is going to be used. What are the flow charts? How will the information will flow? What are the commercialization plans? If you're looking at SBIR, for example. What is the management structure of the application? Who will do what? These are all very, very important parts. It's not only about the science. Again, science is crucial. Science is number one. Without good science, no chance. Don't even bother. But then again, science alone will not win you the award. You need to consider every administrative aspect of winning a grant, of conducting the research, so you can win the grant. Any kind of collaboration is really crucial, is really good, but taking advantage of your academic collaborations as companies is probably the most interesting way. And there are different ways of taking advantage of it. The STTR is one, we've discussed STTR, but even under the standard mechanisms of R01 or R21, you can use a partnership, you can create a partnership, consortium partnership between yourselves and a university professor, could be your advisory board or anyone else that you're in touch with, doesn't really matter. And you can use actually the professor from your collaborating university as PI on the application that you, the company, submit. Okay, so you will get the money and you will allocate it out to the university, to the professor, to their lab to conduct some of the research. But you will still be the signing organization, you will be the one winning the award, while you will use the name of the university professor to increase likelihood for support, for award. So how you structure these collaborations is crucial, but definitely take advantage of any kind of collaboration you have, academic or otherwise. And so when you're looking into looking for a collaboration, the scientific fit is crucial. I mean, don't just bring names out there or people who are not relevant, a clinician in this case. You don't really need to force any kind of external help if it cannot support the work itself. It needs to complement you. You need to be able to show how you manage it. You need to consider ego. This is a major issue with academics. I'm sure you all know that. And especially between academia and industry, some of the questions referred to earlier as to the patenting issues and as to the arrangements before submitting the application, as to the relationships between the academics and the industry. These are all need to be taken into account. Just summarizing some of this, one needs to be aware of all of the different funding opportunities relevant for them. They need to screen through all of these opportunities. They need to talk to program officers. They need to approach the agencies and ask. They'll give answers. They're happy to. That's what they do. That's what they're there for. You need to acknowledge their interests, their view, their perspective, so you can address it in your application. You need to look into a long-term R&D plan. So if you start developing a device, in this case, for example, you need to understand that in 3 quarters or 4 quarters, you want to go into clinical trials, and you need to take into account how much time it will take to review the application and get you the money in time to actually conduct it. You need to plan for multiple submission of applications. A multiple submission strategy is one of the keys to be able to increase your chances for success. If you submit enough applications and you learn how to do it in the right way, your chances for success will be increased. You will beat the statistics. And then you need to find the right funding opportunities to do that. You also need to be aware of your weaknesses and create support exactly where it is needed for your science or for your management or for your administrative, financial, doesn't really matter. Whatever it is, bring in the right support, the right people that could help you. And you need to find the right partners based on that. Know the interests of the agencies and the mechanisms. Understand the differences between the mechanisms and address different non-scientific issues of the application, administrative issues, budgetary, justification, etc. And then you need to establish yourself not only as a great scientist and researcher, but also as a top manager, so you can reduce the risk of giving you money. That's pretty much the bottom line. It's a review that is based on risk evaluation, not pure scientific discussion. Okay, so I'll try to go through this briefly. There are 2 case studies I'm presenting here. I can't mention the name of the clients, but I think they're pretty interesting, both of them. First one is going to focus on a small, very small life science company. It's completely virtual. I think 3 individuals or 4 individuals. They had some SBIR experience when they approached us, and we started working on with them, and they really were looking to do to go beyond that, try to find larger funding opportunities. And eventually we were able to help them win a significant amount of money through the Army. The other case study is focusing on a research institute, but really on the consortium between an independent, very small research institute, a very large state university, and a company, and an industry collaborator. And this consortium was a very intense one, mainly because we had pretty much 60 days to complete the project, the application, and get it submitted, including initial introductions between the three parties there. So I think the bottom line, let's start with that, of the first case study is really what we talked about earlier, is being able to look at everything available on the one hand and being able to submit systematically based on a very specific plan to try and get to the larger amounts of money. I mean, most times if you try to just step in and ask for $20 million, your chances aren't very high. But if you've established yourself, if you won a couple of SBIRs, if you were able to win an R01 and then a U01, and then you go for a big contract for $20 million, $50 million, $100 million, then it makes sense that you will get it. You've built yourself towards it. So that was part of what we tried to do with this company. Very small company. They won a few SBIRs, several STTRs, and we were trying to take them through the other path, through what was considered to be only academic, winning a couple of R01s with them, a couple of U01s with them. And then we found this specific Army solicitation that was perfect for them. And they got second on the final review, but were not invited for negotiation. They didn't get the funding. And actually, the first and the fourth did get the money, the second and third did not. And that is part of what we just mentioned earlier. Having the best score is just not enough sometimes. And there was great frustration there, as you can imagine. But then going back to the reviewers, understanding exactly what went wrong, understanding what they wrote in there, you get back the review of the panel, so you can actually learn from that. And the first reaction is that, well, they couldn't understand the word we were saying, that they weren't smart enough for us. But the truth is there are pretty smart people there reviewing it, and you really need to read and understand the reasons why they did not give you the funding. And then we went back, rewrote the whole thing, went through the process again about 18 months, and eventually were able to win. And there you go. And eventually we were able to win through. I think part of the challenge there was to be able to manage multiple collaborators, and as small startups or people going to start companies, I imagine most of the companies will be virtual, will be based maybe completely on subcontractors, on external work being done. Being able to manage these subcontractors in real life and being able to project your ability to manage these subcontractors in the application is crucial to your ability to actually make a good case and win the award. Very, very, very important. Also, being able to create a large budget and justify it. I've mentioned that earlier many times, but this is probably one of the key elements. And within that, there's a very, very delicate game you can play there between different parts of the budget. So in this case specifically, indirect costs, or F&A, facilities and administration, for companies usually are between 25 and 35% on top of the award. For contracts, you get also fee or profit component into the award that is usually 8%. But a profit is considered to be, by the reviewer, something you put in your pocket, and it really is. What we were able to do here was to increase the indirects, the F&A, for this company while decreasing significantly the profit, but we increased the indirect from 25 to 35 to 48%. That was what was approved for them, 48% indirect cost. And we dropped the profit component from 8% to 3%. So essentially we won 20% and lost 5%. But playing around with these, these different aspects, you need to know the agency. You need to know it'll work. Specifically with the Army, it works great. if you'll try it with NIH contracts, it's not going to work as well. So you need to be aware of the different aspects of each application, of each mechanism, how they work through that, how they make their decisions. So you can make the most of the application. Of course, in this case, it came in the negotiation phase. There was no question almost as to the chances of them to win. It was only about the final negotiation where we could do that. But you need to be aware of the entire spectrum of decisions that any agency will make prior to making a final decision of funding. So the main contribution we I think had to do with the management plan, being able to manage different subcontractors and external resources, being able to justify the budget and play around with different components of the budget, and then really cheer them up after the first go. I guess that was a major part. And by the way, this is important because 10% success rate. Most times you will not win an award. You need to keep on going. It's really the key. You need to keep submitting application, learning from one experience to the next, and keep submitting. The next one was a consortium, incredibly interesting project. But really the issue was to be able to create these collaborations between different types of organizations. A very small, extremely small research institute, independent research institute without a lot of money available to them, a very large and bureaucratic university, and a quite large mid-sized company that actually was not American. It was a European company. And being able to put all of that into an application, adding the fact that the PI, it was this PI's very first large-scale project that he submitted. He had some R01s in the past, but nothing this size. This was very, very difficult. The management of the different forces within the application. The collaboration was just created, the partnership between the three organizations. They really didn't know how to speak to each other. They were using the same terms for different things. Being able to put all that together into a very coherent, very effective application was a great challenge. It wasn't really about the budgeting. It wasn't about justification. It wasn't about the administration of the application. It was really about managing the grant writing process. And as you work with different collaborators, this will be a major difficulty. They will not give you your feedback at the time that you need it. You will not get. You'll create some internal deadlines to get their part of the application. You will never get it. You need to be able to drive them to put together their parts. You need to be able to do it for them sometimes. Write for them their parts. These are all difficult parts of the application writing process, and you always will not have enough time. It doesn't matter when you start. The last week before deadline is going to be hectic. You really need to take that into account. And so making sure you can present leadership of a junior researcher, how his management will be implemented throughout the project, rewriting every section into one coherent presentation. It really doesn't matter if this is a $50 million or 30.6 in this case, or a $500,000 project. If you have multiple individuals writing different parts of the application, then it's important to be able to rewrite all of it into one coherent presentation. All of it is crucial to the chances of your application being successful and awarded. So just finally, I think 2 more slides. Basically, what we do is try to help our clients do all that. We have 40 full-time employees. We have basically broken into 2 groups, a small group of analysts, all with PhDs and understanding of how these systems work, how a project should be presented, and then writers who really are extremely experienced with knowing how to write it. And they have master's degrees in life sciences and MBAs. And the truth is, many years ago, when we just started, almost all of our employees were PhDs. But we found that PhDs writing applications is not really a good thing. They will either go to learn more about a project they know about, or they will argue science if they think they do know about it. They will not write the application. And so we figured out that the process that has a scientific head, if you will, but managerial hands works much, much better. And it works beautifully. The process we go through, and again, this is how we do things and how we would recommend anyone else to do things, but these are just our thoughts, is a two-step process. We start with a strategic assessment. The aim of that assessment is to fully understand what you do, what our clients do scientifically, what are your aims, put it on a timeline, understand your strategy, what is more important than other. And then based on that, try to find every possible funding opportunity available. Go through every solicitation, talk to every relevant program officer. Try to map out the different opportunities based on timelines, when the deadline is, based on how much money they can present you with, and based on their relevance from a scientific perspective. Then you can make a decision which of those is most important and create a multi-submission strategy. Which should you submit first? Once you've decided to start working on each application, then put together a timeline for the application. When should each section be expected? We do it through a ping-pong process between our team and our client's team, but it's the same thing for you and you working with external collaborators or anyone else or even internally within your organization. Work on the different sections, understand the different needs of each section and how it relates to the overall strategy of the application, which mechanism to use, how much money to ask for, what specific aim to focus on, the research design, who should be the collaborators, who should be the PI. All of these questions need to be addressed at first, but they need to be referred to every step of the way. So if you, in section D of an R01, are listing some specific methodologies you work on, make sure that through your bio sketches, you present your capabilities with those methodologies and your history and your track record. Because if not, they will say, great, but who's going to do that? Make sure that if you're putting together your research plan, it's not, well, 1 leads to B, 1 leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to 4, because this is too risky. What if 1 does not lead to 2? Then the whole thing crumbles down. Instead, try to show challenges and then how you will deal with them. What are the alternatives? If 1 does not lead to 2, what will you do? How will you advance work anyways? You need to present a comprehensive presentation of your science and the different alternatives. And then make sure that you go through every section, administrative and other, to be able to submit on time. Submission most types of mechanisms is electronic, so it makes it a lot easier. But anyone else who's been writing R01s 4 years ago knows we all stood in line in the post office trying to get a stamp for the right time before 12 midnight. So this is very important to send it on time. That's pretty much it. I think thanks a lot for coming in. Any questions?